Welcome to the Woodridge Baptist Church podcast. For more information about what's happening in the life of our church, visit our website at www.woodridge.org. Enjoy the podcast.
Well, friends, good to see you. We are continuing our study in Mark's Gospel. We're going to be in Mark chapter 14, starting in verse 43. I'll give you a second just to turn there. And while you do, I just wanted to say to the dads out there, a big happy Father's Day to you. I hope you're celebrated today. Maybe get a steak. That's what I'm doing for lunch because it just makes sense. Actually, my dad is in town, and we get to have a steak together, and that's just a good day. We wanted to honor you today. We actually have a gift for you. It's out in the atrium. If you haven't already gotten it on your way out, we want you to go and get that. But honestly, just thankful. My dad couldn't ask for a better one. He's been here and helping us this week as, Wendy is still recovering. It's always good. I was just thinking how blessed I am to have a guy like that in my life. And I know a lot of you could say the same thing for yourself. I think of all the hours that he poured into me, the sacrifice that he would make and the way that he worked. He worked hard to provide for me and my brothers. The way that he prayed over us, the way that he showed the example of Jesus for us. Dads, what you do, it matters. It just matters. And so don't quit. And don't grow weary in doing good, as Paul said in Galatians. It's a noble work, and thank you for doing it. You have made an eternal difference, and so we love you, and we thank God for you. As we get into Mark chapter 14, I have a hunch. I'm just going to kind of throw it at you. You've been studying this gospel for a while, and you think about the guys. Think about the disciples. Think about them walking just kind of every day, walking with Jesus. You know what I'm saying? Can you imagine the conversations that these guys had? Part of my hunch is there's a whole lot more that was going on with them and Jesus than what we have in the Gospels. What do you think? I can actually prove it. It's not that difficult. We don't know what they ate on Thursday nights for dinner. You know what I mean? We don't have any idea. What were the conversations like as they would go from village to village? Now, we don't really know. A lot of that stuff is not included in the record of the Gospels for us. But I bet it was pretty interesting. I would be willing to bet that they had a lot of great times together. What do you think? Do you think that they threw some zingers at each other? My bet is absolutely. I'll bet Jesus had a jagged wit. I'm convinced of that. Lots of experiences. Could you imagine being the disciples and being there with the feeding of the 5,000? And then you get back to your tent or wherever it is that you're crashing that night. Maybe Jesus has gone off to the side and he's spending some time with the Father because Scripture says he did that a lot. He withdrew. He went to a solitary place. But picture with me for a second, you've got the disciples over here as Jesus is over there, and you've just witnessed the feeding of the 5,000. You're like, what in the world was this that we just watched today? I imagine it was something like that. What do you think? And it's not just that. Imagine them watching somebody with a withered arm and their arm is healed. And then they're sitting there eating falafel or whatever it is that they're snacking on that evening. And they're like, this is the craziest stuff in the world. What are we watching today? This is fun. What are we going to do tomorrow? But I've also come to the belief of this. These kinds of experiences really do connect you. As you go from village to village, these guys become your friends. You become connected. You're doing ministry together. You're busting jokes on each other, right? You really get to know each other. So you really know how to rip into each other too. That's the good stuff of relationships. Do you know what I mean? It's true. But there's also another side of this that is true, is because when you really deeply connect through friendships or other kinds of relationships, it also opens the door up for a deeper hurt when somebody betrays your trust. That's also true. I have this question for you this morning. Have you ever been betrayed? My guess is everybody in the room, to some degree, the answer to that question is yes. You might have been betrayed by a spouse. You might have been betrayed by a friend. You might have been betrayed by a coworker, like you were in the way of an advancement that they wanted, and so they betrayed you so that they could get the advancement that might have rightly been yours. Have you ever been betrayed? If you look in history, no treachery is worse than a betrayal by a family member or a friend. Some of you might remember Julius Caesar. He knew such a treachery. Among the conspirators, who assassinated the Roman leader on March 14th of 44 BC was Marcus Junius Brutus. Y'all remember that because you've all read Shakespeare, am I right? You all remember this. Well, Caesar, this is the thing, historians note this. Caesar not only trusted Brutus, he favored him as a son. And according to Roman historians, Caesar first resisted as the assassins were coming in. They said he resisted them, but when he saw Brutus among the group with his dagger drawn to kill him, he stopped struggling. And he pulled the top part of his robe up over his face as he said very famously, "Et tu, Brute?" which for us just means, "You too?" Like some of these guys, I get it. But you would do this to me. We're in a part in Mark chapter 14 where it's a moment just like that. So let's just jump in. Let's see what God wants to show us today. In Mark 14:43, it says, "And while he was still speaking, Judas, one of the 12, suddenly arrived. With him was a mob with swords and clubs from the chief priests and the scribes and the elders." Now, here, this is my guess. Jesus was not surprised about those guys betraying him. I don't think he was really surprised about Judas betraying him, but this is also true. You can know that something really difficult is coming and it still hurt you when it happens. Those things are not mutually exclusive. Now, here's what we know of the high priest. They were allowed a small army by the Romans. Now, they're in Jerusalem, right? But that's a Roman province. So Rome was really the ones in control. But the high priest had been in cahoots with the Roman leadership. They really worked back and forth. And so what they would do is the Romans were like, "Hey, we'll actually give guards to you. And so you can use them to do your bidding." And that's exactly what they did. In fact, one of the things that we know that the chief priests and those guys would do is they would send Roman guards to people's homes to collect their tithe from them. I have, by the way, worked with our long-range planning committee so that we would institute just such a practice here at Woodridge. Expect a knock-knock very soon. I'm just kidding. We don't work like that, but could you imagine? They knock on the door. Now, the other thing that we also know is because they were in relationship with each other, there was mutual benefit there. So the Romans would show up at the door and they're like, "We're here to collect your tithe." And then they'd probably take a little bit more off the top. You understand what I'm saying? And then they'd go back and you have some of the tax collectors. They go, "Hey, here's a little bit extra for you. Here's a little bit extra for us." It was a huge scam. And what you had were the religious leaders working in concert with the Romans who were hated by the Jews for doing all of this stuff. That's a mess. You know who was getting in the way of it? Jesus was. Jesus is like, "I'm not here for it." That's why he cleansed the temple. That's why he predicted the demolition of the temple. It's like, this thing is going to drop because of what you've made of it. And then they're like, "This guy has got to die," because that would really get in the way of our ability to go forward with this intricate system that we've established and that we're benefiting from. So what happens next, I think many of you know. His betrayer had given them a signal. "The one I kiss," he said, "he's the one. Arrest him and take him away under guard." So when he came, immediately he went up to Jesus and he said, "Rabbi," and he kissed him. Now, it got me thinking, like, why the kiss? Like, why do that? I mean, for a number of reasons. I mean, isn't Jesus famous at this point? You would think. I mean, when you got crowds that are like driving in to see Jesus, maybe he'll perform a miracle today. We want to be there to witness something like this. You might think people might recognize his face. On the other hand, it's the middle of the night, right? So I was thinking, well, okay, if it's the fame thing, to be fair, they didn't live in the day of social media. No doubt Jesus would have had a massive social media following these days, right? But if it's in the middle of the night, you got to find a way to recognize this guy. Maybe this is it. And he wanted to do something that would be, if there's a crowd of people, there's definitely a crowd of people. He wanted to do something like, it's him. There's not going to be a mistake that is made. But when you also think about it, something intimate like a kiss to betray, man, that hurt. You just know it hurt. So what they did is they took hold of him and they arrested him. And one of those who stood by drew his sword, struck the high priest's servant, and cut off of his ear. Now, we know that this was Peter because of other gospels. The high priest's name was Malchus. We also know that because of recorded in other gospels. But also start to think about Peter. Is he just bad with a sword? I mean, how do you miss a whole head, right? You chop off an ear. But why would also you do it? Why would you want to do something like that? And I have an idea. It might not be right, but I think it's an idea. If you remember at the dinner table, it's kind of the last time that they're all together. They're at the dinner table before Jesus said that Peter was going to deny him. Do you remember this? He's like, you're going to do it. It's going to happen. In a moment of bad judgment right here, I think this is right. This might have been Peter's way of saying something like this. I'm going to show you my loyalty. I'm going to show you my loyalty. I told you before I'm not that kind of guy. And see, I just cut somebody's ear off to show you that I'm true to you. Even though Jesus is sitting there going, I wouldn't have asked you to do something like that anyway. This isn't the way that I've worked. And so Jesus said to him and to them, hey, have you come out with swords and clubs as if I were a criminal? Like to capture me? I mean, every day I was among you teaching in the temple. You didn't arrest me, but the scriptures must be fulfilled. Look at it like this. Jesus wasn't exactly hiding himself, am I right? He's been in the wide open public. If what he's been doing has been criminal, then they could have gotten him any time because he's made himself very available to them to do it. But that isn't the way that they've worked. And the reason is because what charges are you going to bring up against this guy? Right? I mean, if what he was doing was obviously breaking the law, you snatch him out of a crowd, those people are going to be like, thank you. I mean, finally, you stopped this guy from doing all the criminalizing that he's been, whatever that is. Whatever he's been doing, you finally stopped it. But there weren't any crimes that he was committing. And so what they were having to do is they were having to trump up charges so that they could put him on trial during the night when there was nobody around to witness it, so that they could get the verdict that they wanted against him and so that they could put him to death. That's these people. And then I go, okay, well, how'd the disciples respond? Because this is their moment, am I right? Well, verse 50 says they all deserted him and ran away. That was their moment. You could stand with. Now, I don't want to beat these guys up too much because I'm not going to sit here and act like I know how I would respond in a moment like that. I hope it would be better. I hope it would be better. I'm just not making any promises. Sometimes fear does get the best of me. My guess is sometimes fear gets the best of you too. It got the best of them. So you have these people. And I want us to think about Judas for just a second. I'm going to start with the bad news. Well, Judas is like, that's not very difficult to find. You know, sometimes Judas is portrayed as like the Montgomery Burns of the Bible. You know what I mean? But for those of you that watch The Simpsons, you know exactly what I mean. And when Jesus said that someone would betray him, I want you to think about this. Nobody thought it was going to be him. Did you catch that? Nobody thought it was going to be him. Think about it. He was one of the most respected disciples. He was the treasurer. He was the money guy. Nobody was thinking that it was going to be him. And that really strikes me in a number of ways. One of those ways is this is a guy that has been with them, been doing ministry with them, has garnered the trust from them, and doesn't have a relationship with the Jesus that he's been in the group with. He doesn't have it. But he can also put up a good enough appearance. He didn't fool Jesus, to be clear, but he had the rest of them pretty much on the hook. He played him. He was good. He was really good. You can be in a crowd, among a crowd of people that follow Jesus, even say that you do, and you really don't. That's one of the things that we know from him. That's very possible, even right now. And if you think of the disciples' reaction, remember when Jesus was like, hey, one of you is going to betray me. Their reaction was, is it me? It wasn't, I'll bet it's him. I'll bet it's him. None of them said that. But it does remind us of something kind of important this morning. And it's this, why Judas is just like me and you. Because he is. He really is. Jesus said to the disciples, one of you will hand me over. In other words, it's another way of saying, one of you is going to sell me out. One of you will do it. Basically, one of you will leave me for the right price. Well, that was Judas. But before we beat them up too much, Jesus said to the whole group, you will all fall away. Verse 50, they scattered. They scattered. So they may not have sold Jesus out for 30 pieces of silver, but they all had a price that they were willing to leave him for. So when you see a bunch of Roman guards coming in, they're sitting there going, all right, they're about to arrest him, and they're probably going to kill him. After all, Jesus has been saying it, right? So if we're here with him, and they're going to arrest and kill him, what do you think is going to happen to us? My guess is they're going to arrest and kill us too. They had a price. They had a price that they weren't willing yet to pay. When you think about Peter, he's the most outspoken of the disciples, wasn't he? Every time you turn around, Peter, not me. You'll deny me. Right? That's Peter. But denying Jesus was still in him. It was still in him, no matter what he said. So the question isn't, do you have a price? You have one. The question is what is your price? Where you go, that's too far. That's just something that I would never give up for him. I would never give up for him. I wouldn't do it. And until we're honest about what that is, what that means is that's exactly the place that the enemy can pick you apart. You won't even call it what it is. You won't even own it for what it is. That's probably the place that he's going to go. Here's the question that we should be asking ourselves, something like this. I'll follow Jesus when, but I will not follow Jesus when. I'm not going to do it. And that's the first moral of the Judas story. He represents all of us, me included. He represents us all. But it brings this up. Why Judas betrayed Jesus and why we do it for the same reasons. I'm glad you asked. Judas betrayed Jesus because Jesus didn't meet his expectations. What Judas thought was going to happen, it seems, is that the great Messiah that had been prophesied in the Old Testament was going to deliver them from Rome, not from sin. He had an expectation that there was going to be this great deliverance, this great political deliverer. And Jesus just wasn't coming through on that. His plan was completely different. But it does bring up an interesting question because Judas wasn't getting what he wanted. So he's like, this guy has to go. The question that we have to ask ourselves is something like this. What expectation do we have of God that when he didn't meet it, we were willing to go? Like you were genuinely frustrated with God because he did not give you what you thought he should. Have you ever been there? Am I the only one in the room that's ever been there? Frustrated. And when you think about it, what that shows is we need to do a deep dive, a hard look at what our actual expectations are of God. When you think of an expectation, it's a strong belief that something will happen in the future. You believe it's going to happen in the future, and then it doesn't. And in fact, you can see that it's not going to happen. And you stand at odds with what you long believed about things and the reality that you find yourself in, and then you find yourself disillusioned with God, who, by the way, might have never said that he was going to do that. But we stand disillusioned with him because maybe we have a belief that God should do something or achieve something. So have you ever really been angry with God because he failed? Let me be very clear here. Your expectations. Not a promise to you, but just something you expected. That's where I think this part of the story is at. And that's when Judas looks and he goes, I'm out. I'm out. But the story does go on. If you look at verse 51, it says, now a certain young man wearing nothing but a linen cloth, don't be too crazy about that. It's basically like PJs. It's what it is. It's like a typical sleeping garment in the ancient Near East. I want to bring those back, by the way. So a certain young man wearing nothing but a linen cloth, he was following him, and they caught hold of him. But he left the linen cloth behind and he ran away naked. Oh my. You know, that really got me thinking. If I were a character in the Bible, who I wouldn't want to be is naked running guy. Yeah. How are you remembered? Well, running naked through a crowd of people. How embarrassing do you think this moment is? How embarrassing do you think this is? I mean, when you look at the New Testament scholars, here's the thing. A good many New Testament scholars think that naked running guy is John Mark. And for those of you that are like, who's John Mark? We actually refer to him just as Mark, the same guy that wrote the gospel that we've been studying. It was his story. He's the guy that ran away naked. It's Mark's way of saying something like this. I saw it. I was there when it happened. But I think it's also another way for Mark to say something like this. And I'm just like everybody else. I'm just like everybody else. Now, are you with me where we're at in the story so far? Because here's what I think. There could be a couple of reactions that we could have to a moment like this. If you're a naked running guy, you might sit there and go, I cannot come back from that. There's no recovery. I don't know how to do it. And you could quit. That would be one possible reaction from you. But there is another possible reaction from you. That no matter how embarrassing it was of a defeat that you faced, you are going to press on with what is right. You could do that too. And you could try to make things work back out. So if you're sitting here this morning and you're frustrated with your faith, or you're struggling, or you're sitting there and all of your failures are right in front of your eyes, I want you to remember something this morning. Because there's some other things that we know in the Bible about Mark. One, we know that he's a cousin to Barnabas. That's pretty cool. And because of that connection to Barnabas, he got a connection to a guy named Paul. Many of you know who he is. And what happened was Barnabas hooks him up with Paul, and Mark gets to be one of the guys that goes on Paul's first missionary journey. Now that would be awesome. What do you think? But here you are on the first missionary journey, and you get to the first pit stop of the work that you've just started, and Mark quit right there. And Paul sent him back home to Jerusalem. He's like, you need to leave. Also not your best moment. Is that fair? So now you're naked running guy that ran away from the first missionary experience that you have. It's not good. But there is more to the story. Because the same Paul, who's at the very end of his life, the last letter that he wrote was 2 Timothy. He wrote it to Timothy. And he's dying and he knows it. He's about to be killed. He said this in 2 Timothy 4:11. He said, only Luke is with me. Bring Mark with you when you come, for he will be helpful to me in my ministry. That's a restoration story. And I think we just need more of those today, don't you? We need more of those today. But I'm going to be fair, restoration is tricky business. And for a lot of reasons, one of which is some people don't want it. You know what I mean? Some people don't want it. There's too much pride in their heart. There's too much self-justifying in their heart. They've hurt you. They've betrayed you. No doubt. And you don't see one whiff of them understanding that that's what they've done. That's Judas. And what you've been looking for the whole time is just some, self-awareness. You've been looking for some humility from them. You've been looking for a willingness on their part to bring restoration to the brokenness in the relationship. You're just not seeing it there. There's always some just so story that they've got on why they did to you what they did. Are y'all with me here? If that person's in the room, point at them right now. Don't do it. I'm going to tell you this. I'm thankful to see this moment between Paul and Mark. I'm thankful because it's a good ending, and we need more good endings. We need more of those. But when you look at Judas, he betrayed and he never came back from it. He killed himself. Never came back from it. There is a difference because you have Judas is the betrayer, Peter is the denier. If you look in the other Gospels, it says both of them repented. The problem with that is that the Greek word for Judas doesn't mean to repent. It doesn't mean he changed his mind. It does not mean he changed his life. The word is better translated, he was sorry he got caught. What you see from Peter later is that he was sorry for what he had done. I hope you can see the difference because it's substantial. So I do have some thoughts here this morning. Are you the Judas or are you the Jesus here? And none of you are Jesus, so here's what I mean. Are you the betrayer or are you the betrayed? And I'm going to go out on a pretty strong limb here and say you're both. You are both. You have betrayed people and you have been betrayed by people. I feel pretty good about saying that. I feel good about saying that about myself. It's just true. And it got me thinking. Henry Cloud wrote a book on trust. It's an excellent book. He loves the Lord very deeply. He's been a clinician for a lot of years. But when he was looking at the problem of restoring trust in a relationship, he said, this is the way that it has to go. And I want you to be thinking about maybe a relationship in your life where there needs to be a good ending to it. This is what he said. He said, the first step in rebuilding trust is that whoever, and I'm going to say the Judas is, whoever the betrayer is, has to acknowledge the breach of trust. They have to do it. It's not enough, by the way, for you, the one that's betrayed, to acknowledge the breach of trust. You're very aware of it. The betrayer has to acknowledge the breach of trust. They have to be able to say that they know that they've done it, and you can see from the heart that they mean it. The second thing is that the betrayer has to understand the other person's perspective on why what they did actually brought the harm to the relationship that it did. And you can see that it's sincere when they're talking about it. I hurt you. I'm sorry for what I did. What can I do to make this right? No, there's nothing from them that's like this. Well, had you just been different, then I wouldn't have done that. And so, like you had it coming to you. None of that. It's just, I hurt you. There's nothing that makes me hurting you right. I just want to make it right. Which means they demonstrate empathy and genuine remorse. How many of you would agree with me? You can see the difference when it's in front of you. How many of you can see the difference? There's no wall up in this person. There's no self-justifying from this person. They're just hurt that they hurt you. They don't want to do it again. He said, if you want to have a restored relationship, this has got to be a part of it. He said, and then last, you see that they are consistently acting with integrity toward you. They're consistently acting with integrity towards you because they don't want to do that again. But we need to remember in all of this, this is a process. This is not a single event. It takes time. It takes time. We would like to see that trust is restored, but you go, I am so sorry. Okay, that's all right. You got all my trust back. You know what people want to see? They want to see a lived difference in you. It's what makes your words believable. It's what makes them believable. Maybe what you need today is a restoration story. Maybe, like right now, you're sitting there thinking of a person and you go, we need to come back together. We need to have a meeting of the minds and a meeting of the hearts. We need this. We need to acknowledge the breach. We need to understand the other person's perspective. I need to show empathy and remorse, and they need to see a lived difference in me. They need that. Maybe that's where you're at. Today is a good day for that. What do you think? But it reminds me of something that's really important to remember. If you want peace in your relationships, peace doesn't just happen. I don't care how much you want it. It doesn't just happen. You work for it. You work for it. Think about this. Judas has betrayed Jesus. In a couple hours, Jesus is dead. He's dead in a couple hours from this moment. He has had a crown of thorns shoved onto his head. He has been beaten with a scourge. He has had nails driven through his body. And he stops breathing. Just a couple hours from this moment. And he did this to broker peace with me and you. Peace didn't just happen. He bought it. It doesn't just happen. He did the work for it because the wages of sin was death. On the flip side of it is the free gift of God is eternal life through Jesus Christ. You remember earlier though, what I said? For some of you that they're going, I have reached out to the person that broke my trust and they just weren't receiving it. This is one of the hardest lessons that we learn from Jesus. Same for him. Same for him. Greater love has no man than this, and he would lay down his life for his brother. He laid down his life for you. And some people are like, I'll pass. I'll pass. Same for him. But it can be different. It can be different. It's all in the matter of the response that we will take in humility to receive him, but also to receive healing in other relationships that need healing. That's up to us. So what do you need restoration with today? As we go into a time of prayer, 3 things that I'm just going to keep in front of you as you talk with God. This is the first. Maybe what you need to have is peace with God. Good news, you can have that right now. Right now. That the second that you call on the name of the Lord, you have peace with God. It's there. The forgiveness of sins, you've been made clean, you've been made whole. It's good. It's good. It's what he's been waiting for. Maybe what you need to have is peace with someone else. Maybe in this time of prayer, what you do is you focus on praying for that person, that God would help you as you go to broker peace with them, just like Jesus did as he left glory to come stomp on this rock and to die on a cross for me and you. Peace comes at a cost. But maybe you pray, God, give me wisdom on how to do this. Give me the right heart to do it. Or maybe you're just sitting here and you're going, I just need to talk with someone. I just need to pray with someone. The good news is the ministers are at the back. And as we go into a time of prayer, which is also a time of response, I just want to leave you with the Lord. For whatever burden he's placed on your heart, for whatever it is he wants you to talk with him about, I want you to have this time to talk with him. And so let's pray.
We hope you have enjoyed the podcast. For more information about our church, visit www.woodridge.org.